Let's look at the interview section, right? The interview section here, the content piece, there's the main part of the interview and then the final question, right? So remember, in this interview section, you already did the pre-interview here in the interview section. And the pre-interview, the second part is asking the person what's top of mind for them, what do you want to make sure they talk about, and also a couple great case studies that you can talk about. So right now you've already have, probably 4 to 7 bullets that you can create an amazing piece of content. So this is additional questions if you feel you want to ask them as like a fallback questions. This is not just, these questions we have found elicit great stories, right? That's why we have them here. So you can use this and keep this as a fallback. If you like some of them, keep them. If you're in your template and you don't like them, feel free to delete them because they're your template, right? So what I want to point out here is you already have planned out the episode in the pre-interview, but you may like some of these questions. So you may add them in, or you may have a couple industry questions that you may want to ask. Let's say you work with e-commerce companies and you want to know what their favorite e-commerce brands are that they like or whatever it is. So you may have a couple industry related questions, but for the most part, you've already planned this in the pre-interview. And these are good questions as an add-on. So here's some of the questions that we have found. There's business and personal. We have found elicit really good stories. And by the way, with this is not meant to follow step by step. You can pick and choose which ones you like. Yeah, you could throw a dart at any of these and use them in the middle of an interview. Let's say there's a lull in the interview. I could say, hey, you know what, Mary? Tell me, what are some of the big milestones in your, the journey of your company that you're especially proud of, or in your career that you're especially proud of? I just chose 5 at random, right? And I can use it in the middle of a conversation. So these are not meant to follow step by step. Now you can, if you wanted, if someone just wanted to follow this format, it'd be a rock solid interview, but it would also be pretty long. So just use the ones you like, and you could eliminate the ones you don't. But so here's a couple of the questions we have found that elicit really good stories. So how did you get started? I remember I had the co-founder of Pixar on, okay? And I asked this question: how did Pixar get started? How'd you get started? And he went on for 20 minutes telling the most incredible stories about Steve Jobs and George Lucas and what went on and how Pixar got started. So these are some business related questions. How'd you get started? Where did the idea come from? What were the early days of your career or company like? What were the biggest turning points in your company? What were some big milestones you're proud of? What gave you the most traction and results? What's a big mistake or pitfall that you learned a lot from? And you try and get a story. So examples may be a partnership pitfall, a hiring pitfall, a product pitfall, a customer pitfall, a marketing pitfall. So there's a few examples. Next would be, what's a big challenge you had to overcome, personally or professionally? What's a proud moment? When you look back, what's been an especially proud moment of the company or career or whatever? And this will kind of relate back to the final question in a second, but who are your mentors and the best piece of advice? You can ask someone, what are a few of your daily rituals that you find most important? What's a typical day? And from a personal side, if you want to think of some personal questions, go, and this, you can prep someone ahead of time or not, but I at one point prepped some people on what's a strange, like some really well-known, more famous guests. I like to ask, like, what's a strange hobby you have or quirk, because it humanizes them a bit. So what do most people not know about you? What's a strange quirk or a strange habit or hobby? And I'll ask them usually ahead of time just to prep them. What's the craziest thing you've ever done? Where are you from? What was it like growing up? So someone's from, let's say they live in New York City and they grew up in rural Iowa. I was like, what was it like living in rural Iowa now that you're in New York City? Or sometimes I like to ask, you are a top agency owner now. I'm sure when you were 9, that wasn't something you were like, I want to be an agency owner when I grow up. What did you want to do when you grew up? So that's another question. So this is part of the interview questions. And we went back to the, how do you rock an interview, which is have the guest tell stories. So you've planned it in the pre-interview, and these are questions help elicit points in time. If you find a guest is being more general, like, you know what, my marketing, and they don't give a specific example. When I was successful, my marketing, appealed to everyone. So you could say, hey, can you tell me a time when your marketing you felt appealed to everyone? Or tell me when you worked with a client who, when you get them to a point in time, they tell a story and it's engaging. So those are a few pieces from the interview question section. But if you've done the pre-interview properly, you have a rock star interview ready to go. And this you can just add on.